Welcome to the fourth branch program, the place for common sense. Today is Monday, July 15, 2019. I am MD. If you've been here before, thank you for your participation. It makes the journey a little bit lighter, a tad more bearable. If you're here for the first time, welcome to the fourth branch program. The fourth branch program is not associated with any political party, and we at the fourth branch do not have any political aspiration. Our ultimate objective is to perfect the union. In order to do so, we have to remove the biggest obstacle of all: ignorance. Such the importance of removing ignorance from the equation in order to advance the affairs of the country. In 60 seconds, we will give you the world. Live from New York City, at the top of the hour, every weekday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., the fourth branch presents discussions, debates, commentaries on social, political issues, current events, sports, entertainment, religion, education, science, and every Saturday at 10:30 a.m. for a full presentation on controversial issues such as abortion, homosexuality, war on blacks. Are Republicans dumber than Democrats? Information which might irritate you, make you cry, make you laugh, but above all, will make you smarter. Join us every time. It is the right thing to do. It is the only way to keep your sanity in a world of chaos, hypocrisy, immorality, and deception. Well, common sense. Once again, welcome to the fourth branch program. There are plenty of news out there, but here at the fourth branch, if you've been watching this program, you know we focus on information, news that impact our life, our society. We focus on issues, anything that not only impact this generation but future generation. Sometimes we have to go back in the past in order to understand some of the aspect of the discussion. As usual, since the release of the Mueller report, every day we read a portion of the report. At this point, we are reading volume 2 of the report. Now, Mueller was scheduled to be Capitol Hill on 17th of July, a couple of days, but it seems that there's been some rescheduling of appearance on Capitol Hill. We will keep you updated on that. And as we mentioned before, as soon as Mueller shows up on Capitol Hill, we will stop the reading of the report, because our argument is, if Mueller cannot clear the air after hearing on Capitol Hill, there is no amount of reading that can do the job. So we're watching that particular event very closely. But before we start the reading of the Mueller report, there is a very important development. We will not call that just domestic, but international development we would like to touch on. Of course, it impacts us. That's why we here at the Fourth Branch will take a look at that. Now, since the UK former UK ambassador Kim Darroch, since he has resigned from his post, and the reason that he did, in case you weren't watching or following all that's going on in the, he did talk privately, of course, about the ineptitude of the US president, and showing the grim side of what's going on in the United States. Nothing new, but because even here in the United States, we have behind the scene a number of politicians, both Democrats and Republicans, really talking about how devastating it is for the United States of America to have someone like Donald Trump in the Oval Office. So nothing new here, except for one problem, that the conversation was leaked and published. Now it becomes, well, a big deal. Now, since these leaks have been coming out, it didn't take long before former UK ambassador Sir Kim Darroch handed his resignation. And of course, needless to point out that there is already a new ambassador who has replaced him. In fact, the new ambassador in UK has gotten himself in trouble locally, not on the international scene, but rather locally, not to have forcefully defended the former UK ambassador Kim Darroch. Now, always a problem in diplomacy. It is always a problem whenever that there is a leak of information in regards to a head of state or a public official who says something that's not positive, that's not flattering about other head of state, that individual have to deal with. Now, it even more so when you consider that UK is the closest, the strongest ally to the United States. But the situation is even worse when you have somebody like Donald Trump sitting in the Oval Office. In fact, that's the very reason this situation happened, because you have a UK ambassador who made statement that's not unusual behind the closed door. Those type of statements are usually made by politicians, and sometimes something like that happened and the information leaked. Usually that causes some kind of friction between two countries, but it never really goes too far, because politicians, no matter which country you're from, you're kind of accustomed to the idea of other politicians from other countries would say things and flattering about you. But with Donald Trump, it's a whole different ballgame. You may recall, right after that, he even made a statement publicly, say he would not be dealing with Kim Darroch anymore. Now, I don't have to go to great lengths to explain how childish that is, notwithstanding the fact that the statement that came made should have come out. But nevertheless, to have the United States president publicly saying those kind of things, that's a different story. Now, that's not the only leak that came out. As I mentioned, since leaks have been coming out from his office, then a number of other leaks came out, and one of which of such we will touch shortly when we talk about the Mueller report, because it's on the dossier as well. But what I want to talk about is actually what currently is something that's looming on the horizon. It's almost the exchanges between Donald Trump and the Iranian government is kind of reminiscent of what happened in 2003, the Iraq War. And I want to talk about that because every so often the United States of America got itself involved in a war. Most of those wars are not warranted. Most of those wars are costly. And I would say most of those wars are triggered by individuals who build war weapons, planes, and so on. And of course, their arsenal of the business rely exclusively on the use of those weapons and the government in order for the business to continue to be successful, profitable. As such, those people, they have individuals out there whose primary job is to incite whoever is in the Oval Office, usually a Republican. Republicans are already all for that. Now you have the machine that needs to make money, and they incite everything in order to make a war happen. That the Iraq war should not have happened, was not warranted. That's not anything new to anyone. Even before the war happened, we know that the United States was rushing to war, not because of anything or any danger that Iraq posed to America, but rather because the individuals who were at that time running the country, the Republican Bush administration, actually concocted a story and sold it to the American people, who at that time were very receptive to those type of story, and took the country to war. And we currently looking at another play of words between Iraq, or rather Iraq and the United States. Today I can confess that during the 2016 presidential election, I was supporting Donald Trump for one particular reason, and one reason alone. It's because of his stance against those unnecessary war that the United States has always engaged into. Because, as I mentioned, most of those wars are not warranted. We cause, we incite, we trigger, we entice government across the world in order to go to war. Of course, in order to do that, we have to sell that to the American people. As such, we created some stories to show that that country put the American lives in danger. And once the public is sold into some kind of story that the government sells, then now the government feels empowered, emboldened. That's why when they stand on the podium, the American people would not tolerate. They always use the American people
in order to go and do something bad on the international stage. The war in Iraq was also put on the American people. But the part that I want to bring, again, I mentioned that I did support that aspect of the thinking of Donald Trump. And today, as I mentioned, I feel terribly ashamed, not only for supporting, because it's an idea, but it's a costly idea, that every so often we take the country to war for no reason. Usually there is never a substantive reason for the United States to be at war. But watch for a Republican administration in power and watch for a reason to take the country to war. It's because the machine, the war machine, that can only be profitable, those people that are selling, and I will next time a list of those organizations that rely exclusively on the United States being at war for them to make money, to be profitable. As such, they always out there looking for ways to trigger concoct stories to sell to the administration in power, usually Republican, and then for those people to trigger war and go to war. And you should see the extent to which those people concoct those stories and how they manipulate the stories. Sometimes they have to go outside the United States and trigger something, and sometimes I would venture to say they probably at the other end of the spectrum making something happening on the international scene, however they make that happen, in order to drag the US into a war, because their business cannot make money, their business cannot be profitable unless the United States goes to war. But when the United States goes to war, they don't care that we, the taxpayer, have to carry the burden. We have to shoulder the burden, the financial burden of the United States going to war, and our soldiers have to shoulder the burden of having to fight a war that's not warranted at the cost of their lives. The United States, the Iraq war, according to studies, that those information I'm about to give you are dated 2013. In other words, 6 years later, you can rest assured those numbers have been revised. They have increased, not decreased. Because even as of 2013, when the studies were made, many studies were made by at least 30 academics and experts after the war has been over for a decade. According to the studies, there were at least 134,000 Iraqi civilians that died in that war. They were civilian, as you heard. They weren't involved in anything. They weren't part of anything. But we concocted a war story, and we killed 134,000 Iraqis. But according to the study, that's the Watson Institute for International Studies. According to the study, however, as many times, 4 times that number were killed. The reason they came with 134,000 is because those are actual numbers, actual bodies counted. As many as 4 times that numbers were killed. In other words, more than 500,000 Iraqi civilians were killed in a war that was not supposed to happen. Now, according to the study, if you add humanitarian workers, you add security forces, you add journalists, that number, that 134,000, increased to 190,000. Now that's only in civilian. You may not remember that the United States of America was attacked, and Afghanistan was responsible for that attack because, of course, that's where Bin Laden hold up, and that's where all the preparation to attack the United States of America happened. But the Bush administration decided, since the country was vulnerable, the psychology of the country, of the American people, was very low. We were very vulnerable. We were eager to accept any kind of action by our government if it means to protect us. So the government took advantage of that. More than 500,000 Iraqi civilians were killed in that war. According to the study, close to 4,500 US soldiers were killed. The picture you're looking at is a dead baby that an American soldier was holding. Of course, you don't expect soldiers to be emotional, but on the battlefield, the soldiers witness what kind of casualties Iraqi civilians endured. Of course, they didn't know that the war was not warranted. And that's the kind of adventure the United States of America every so often got itself into, and going around the world, not only killing civilians, but having soldiers killed for no reason whatsoever. Oh, I forgot to mention, it is estimated that the Iraq War, when those studies were made, 2013, it cost the American taxpayer close to $4 trillion. So it's not just the money, it's in life, it's our soldiers' life, and the worst part, it is a concocted story to go to that war, to have that war. But that wasn't it that happened in Iraq. They estimated that at least more than 1 million Iraqis left Iraq to look for refuge elsewhere. They were displaced. People whose lives were completely altered because of a war that was not warranted. Now, why did I tell you all that? I tell you all that is because we're learning from the leak cable from the UK ambassador who just resigned his post, that Donald Trump shredded the Iran deal that was made by the US along with 7 other superpowers to ensure that Iran did not pursue nuclear weapon, did not enrich uranium. Now we're finding out that Donald Trump did that to spite Obama. He is what now our government has become a pawn for personal matters. International jeopardy, because we are currently trading war words with Iran. At any point in time, any mistake can get the United States at war because of some stupid individual who do not understand diplomacy, who does not understand how things get done in the world, decide just like he's vindictive about anything that is done in his private life. Now he's using the government to put the country in danger, to put the United States on the brink of war. A deal was reached to prevent that very problem from happening. Those are not he said. Those are diplomacy, former ambassador, UK ambassador, whose information are credible. Finding out that Donald Trump ended the Iran deal to spite Obama, just like he's done for anybody else. People he don't like, he doesn't like, people he want to have a war with. But this time, using government, using the United States of America, the Oval Office, for personal reason. So the country goes to war. Taxpayers' money have to be spent. Our soldiers' lives have to be expended because of some stupid individual who does not understand how this thing works, but has some vindictive behavior towards his predecessor. And this is the person that's making America great. How is that for a role model for your children and your grandchildren? Yes, you heard correctly. Not some damn liberal telling you that. As Republicans always want to treat any information that tells you exactly the kind of individual Donald Trump is, which I call him Sleazy Don, and he deserves even worse than that. I could not use worse on the air. That's the best I can do under the circumstances. Now we're learning. He used the Oval Office in his vindictive behavior. He trashed a deal that took years, that took many years of negotiation, not just by the United States of America, but by other government, to get to the point of saying, now we are okay, that Iran is not going to pursue enriching uranium. You didn't have to like the deal. In fact, a lot of people know already that something better could have been reached. But that's a good start. So every time I hear my fellow Republicans, it always gives me heartache to see that the country cannot move forward. It's because of this problem. Instead of helping to advance the affairs of the country, the individual that occupies office has a beef with somebody else and decide for the country to pay the price. And I guarantee you, the United States of America goes to war with Iran, the price will be paid by our taxpayers and our soldiers with their lives. That's why it always baffles me when I hear Republicans making rationale that seems to be detrimental to their own interests. Who does that? What kind of smart people do things like that? If you are a patriot, you cannot not be outraged, because this is not a matter of being Democrat or being Republican, because the very reason that our democracy survives is because of that very structure of our government. The minute that you don't have any oversight, then at that point the idea of democracy in the United States ceases to exist. So if you are a Republican and you think it's okay, then you too are no patriot. There is no other word of saying it. No matter what you hear people saying, trying to go around to explain it to you, that's all it means. If you are okay with what is currently going on with Donald Trump, with the Republican Party, you categorically are not a patriot. And no matter what you think of yourself, you are not a patriot. Because a patriot is someone who would give or who would make sacrifice sometimes of his or her own life, let alone as a political party, in order to preserve the democracy, in order to preserve the Constitution, in order to preserve the rule of law. So if you cannot do that, don't talk to anyone about being patriot, because you are no patriot. I strongly encourage you to visit the peoplebranch.org, in which we publish many articles, usually social, political. We just published an article in regards to the guardrail of democracy being removed, and this is the first of several parts article we will be publishing in the next few days. So I strongly encourage you to visit the peoplebranch.org, and we'll be right back. Now, you remember I mentioned earlier the former British ambassador Kim Darroch. There are a lot of leaks that have happened since, not just about the statement he made, the remarks that he made about Donald Trump, but a number of leaks, including what I just mentioned, the fact that Donald Trump reverse the Iran deal, not because of anything other than because he wanted to spite Obama. Now, another leak that came out of that predicament is the fact that the ambassador also noted that the dossier, the Steele dossier, is actually very credible. He said that most of what's reported on the Steele dossier is legit. That's the way he put it. Absolutely legit. So much for those Republican legislators who've been trying to pin the Steele dossier as some sort of hack job done by some individual who was trying to please the Democrat. Now, since I mentioned that, I might as well point out that contrary to what has been spread in the public, saying that the Steele dossier was a contract initiated by Democrats, it is absolutely untrue. The Steele dossier started with the Republican who were trying to find information about Donald Trump. That's how the whole process started. It didn't start with the Democrat. Now the Democrat came into the picture after the Republican ended the contract with the organization who hired Steele. Then the Democrat picked that up. So no, it did not start with Democrats. It started with Republicans. For some reason, whenever the conversation about the Steele dossier came forth, it's always the Democrat that hired Steele. Yes, the Democrat did later use Steele as a contractor to get information, but it was the Republican who started the process. After the election, Trump continues to deny any contact or connection with Russia or that Russia aided his election. On November 18th, Trump was elected president. 2 days later, Russian officials told the press that the Russian government had maintained contact with Trump's immediate entourage campaign. In response, Hope Hicks, who had been the Trump campaign spokesperson, said, quote, "We are not aware of any campaign representatives that were in touch with any foreign entities before yesterday, when Mr. Trump spoke with many world leaders," end of quote. Hicks gave an additional statement denying any contact between the campaign and Russia. Quote, "It never happened. There was no communication between the campaign and any foreign entity during the campaign," end of quote. On December 10, 2016, the press reported that U.S. intelligence agents had, quote, "concluded that Russia interfered in last month's presidential election to boost Donald Trump's bid for the White House," end of quote. Reacting to the story the next day, the president-elect said, quote, "I think it's ridiculous. I think it's another excuse," end of quote. He continued that no one really knew who was responsible for the hacking, suggesting the intelligence community had, quote, "no idea if it's Russia or China or somebody. It could be somebody sitting in a bed someplace," end of quote, the president-elect said. The president-elect said that Democrats were, quote, putting out, end of quote, the story of Russian interference because they suffered one of the greatest defeats in the history of politics, end of quote. On December 18, 2016, Podesta told the press that the election was, quote, distorted by a Russian intervention, end of quote, and questioned whether Trump campaign official had been, quote, in touch with the Russian, end of quote. The same day, incoming Chief of Staff Reince Priebus appeared on Fox News Sunday and declined to say whether the president-elect accepted the intelligence community determination that Russia intervened in the election. When asked about any contact or cooperation between the campaign and Russia, Priebus said, "Even this question is insane. Of course we didn't interface with the Russian." Priebus added that, quote, "this whole thing is a spin job." Said the real question is why the Democrats are doing everything they can to delegitimize the outcome of the election, end of quote. On December 29, 2016, the Obama administration announced that in response to Russian cyber operation aimed at the US election, it was imposing sanctions and other measures on several Russian individuals and entities. When first asked about the sanction, President-elect Trump said, quote, "I think we ought to get on with our lives," end of quote. He then put out a statement that said, quote, "it's time for the country to move on to bigger and better things," end of quote, but indicated that he would meet with intelligence community leaders the following week for a briefing on Russian interference. The briefing occurred on January 6, 2017. Following the briefing, the intelligence community released the public version of its assessment, which concluded with high confidence that Russia had intervened in the election through a variety of means with the goal of harming Clinton's electability. The assessment further concluded with high confidence that Putin and the Russian government had developed a clear preference for Trump. Several days later, BuzzFeed published a verified allegation compiled by former British intelligence officer Christopher Steele during the campaign about Trump's Russia connection under the headline, "These reports allege Trump has ties to Russia," end of quote. In a press conference the next day, the president-elect called the release, quote, "an absolute disgrace," end of quote, and said, quote, I have no deals that could happen in Russia because we stayed away. So I have no deal, I have no loans, and I have no dealing. We could make deals in Russia very easily if we wanted to. I just don't want to because I think that would be a conflict," end of quote. Several advisors recall that the president-elect viewed stories about his Russian connection, the Russian investigation, and the intelligence community assessment of Russian interference as a threat to the legitimacy of his electoral victory. Hicks, for example, said that the president viewed the intelligence community assessment as his Achilles heel because even if Russia had no impact on the election, people would think Russia helped him win, taking away what he had accomplished. Sean Spicer, the first White House communication director, recalled that the president thought the Russia story was developed to undermine the legitimacy of his election. Gates said the president viewed the Russia investigation as an attack on the legitimacy of his win. And Prebus recall that when the intelligence assessments came out, the president-elect was concerned people would question the legitimacy of his win. The president's conduct concerning the investigation of Michael Flynn. During the presidential transition, incoming National Security Advisor Michael Flynn had 2 phone calls with the Russian ambassador to the United States about the Russian response to U.S. sanctions imposed because of Russia's election interference. After the press reported on Flynn's contact with the Russian ambassador, Flynn lied to incoming administration officials by saying he had not discussed sanctions on the calls. The officials publicly repealed those lies in press interviews. The FBI, which previously was investigating Flynn for other matters, interviewed him about the calls in the first week of the inauguration, and Flynn told similar lies to the FBI. On January 26, 2017, Department of Justice (DOJ) official notified the White House that Flynn and the Russian ambassador had discussed sanctions and that Flynn had been interviewed by the FBI. The next night, the president had a private dinner with FBI Director James Comey in which he asked for Comey's loyalty. On February 13, 2017, the president asked Flynn to resign. The following day, the president had a one-on-one meeting with Comey in which he said, quote, "I hope you can see your way to letting this go, to letting Flynn go," end of quote. Evidence. Incoming National Security Advisor Flynn discusses sanctions on Russia with Russian Ambassador Sergei Kislyak. Shortly after the election, President-elect Trump announced he would appoint Michael Flynn as his national security advisor. For the next 2 months, Flynn played an active role on the presidential transition team, coordinating policy transition and communicating with foreign government officials, including Russian Ambassador to the United States Sergei Kislyak. On December 29, 2016, as noted in Volume 2.A.4 Supra, the Obama administration announced that it was imposing sanctions and other measures on several Russian individuals and entities. That day, multiple PTT, Presidential Transition Team, exchanged email about the sanctions and the impact they would have on the incoming administration. And Flynn informed members of the PTT that he would be speaking to the Russian ambassador later in the day. Flynn, who was in the Dominican Republic at the time, and Katie McFarland, who was slated to become the Deputy National Security Advisor and was at the Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida with the President-elect and other senior staff, talked by phone about what, if anything, Flynn should communicate to Kislyak about the sanction. McFarland had spoken with incoming administration officials about the sanction and Russia's possible response and thought she had mentioned in those conversations that Flynn was scheduled to speak with Kislyak. McFarlane informed Flynn that incoming administration officials at Mar-a-Lago did not want Russia to escalate the situation. At 4:43 p.m. that afternoon, McFarlane sent an email to several officials about the sanction and informed the group that, quote, Jen Flynn is talking to Russian ambassador this evening, end of quote. Approximately 1 hour later, McFarlane met with the president-elect and senior official and briefed them on the sanction and Russia possible responses. Incoming Chief of Staff Reince Priebus recalled that McFarlane may have mentioned at the meeting that the sanction situation could be, quote, cooled down, end of quote, and not escalated. McFarlane recalled that at the end of the meeting, someone may have mentioned that the president-elect that Flynn was speaking to the Russian ambassador that evening. Did not recall any response to the president-elect. Priebus recalled that the president-elect viewed the sanction as an attempt by the Obama administration to embarrass him by delegitimizing his election. Immediately after discussing the sanction with McFarlane on December 29, 2016, Flynn called Kislyak and requested that Russia respond to the sanction only in a typical manner, without escalating the situation. After the call, Flynn briefed McFarlane on its substance. Flynn told McFarlane that the Russian response to the sanction was not going to be escalatory because Russia wants a good relationship with the Trump administration. I apologize for the interruption. On December 30th, 2016, Russian President Vladimir Putin announced that Russia would not take retaliatory measures in response to the sanction at that time. Would instead, quote, plan further steps to restore Russian-US relations based on the policies of the Trump administration, end of quote. Following the president-elect tweeted, quote, great move on delay by Vladimir Putin. I always knew he was very smart, end of quote. On December 31st, 2016, he called Flynn and told him that Flynn's request had been received at the highest level and Russia had chosen not to retaliate in response to the request. Later that day, Flynn told him about this follow-up conversation with Kislyak and Russia's decision not to escalate the sanction situation based on Flynn's request. McFarlane recalled that Flynn thought he had made a difference. Flynn spoke with other incoming administration officials that day, but does not recall whether they discussed the sanction. Flynn recalled discussing the sanction issues with incoming administration official Steve Bannon the next day. Flynn said that Bannon appeared to know about Flynn's conversation with Kislyak, and he and Bannon agreed that they had stopped the trend on Russia's response to the sanction. On June 2017, Flynn saw President-elect and thought they discussed the Russian reaction to the sanction. But Flynn did not have a specific recollection of telling the president-elect about the substance of his call with Kislyak. The intelligence community were surprised by Russia's decision not to retaliate in response to the sanction. When analyzing Russia's response, they became aware of Flynn's discussions of sanctions with. Previously, the FBI had opened an investigation of Flynn based on his relationship with the Russian government. Flynn's contact with Kislyak became a key component of that investigation. It is difficult. It is not part of the Mueller report, rather a remark. It's difficult to imagine that any individual with the average intelligence who would take the time to read the report would not come to the same conclusion Robert Mueller has, mainly that Donald Trump committed obstruction of justice. But the sad aspect of this conversation is the fact that we mentioned before that legislators, both Democrats and Republicans, but overwhelmingly Republicans, decided not to read the report. Now, you may be a Republican and think that's fine, that's okay, because obviously the affairs of the country do not matter to you. Although you would argue that's not the case. In fact, that's kind of the way the Republican proved to be patriot, by not caring about the affairs of the country, but claiming every chance that they have, they are patriot. You would not put up with this legislator, someone you elect to represent you. Now, granted, I understand that individual constituents do not have the time, they busy, they have to take care of their family, but Republican constituents, they were hired for that job. That's their job. They are hired to make certain that those kind of things are understood, known, and the information trickle down to the constituent who are paying them. It is sometimes difficult to understand how a Republican constituent could be doing things that completely against his or her own best interest. Conversation with my fellow Republican always leave me baffled. The individual you elect to represent you, his priority, his first task is to protect the interests of the United States, not the interests of your political party, the interests of the United States. In fact, all of the legislators, representatives, took an oath to do just that. But the reason they sway away from doing the job is because you, the Republican constituent, you condone them not doing the job. You encourage them to erode the freedom, the democracy, to shred the Constitution. You encourage them. You, the constituent, do that because when you're okay with them not doing the job, when you're okay with them not exercising oversight on the executive branch, all you're doing is okay them doing something for the country. There's not many ways you can spin that. Voted for Donald Trump. You supported him. You claim that he's the greatest thing that has happened since sliced bread. And yet, his records say he's a criminal, he's a crook, he's a liar, he's a scoundrel. That you cannot argue. The record is dead. In fact, the proof, you, the Republican constituent, even the Republican legislators that are doing everything possible to shield Donald Trump, they cannot and will not say that they would use Donald Trump as a role model for their children and their grandchildren. Me, if I have a president, especially a president that I support, I would want to use that individual to tell my children and hopefully my grandchildren later on that I would want you to emulate that individual. If you cannot do that, you know you're doing something wrong. You made the wrong decision. As I mentioned, I feel ashamed that I supported. I didn't vote. I supported Donald Trump because, well, some of the ideas that he stood for, that I personally supported. But I feel ashamed that I even find myself in a predicament that I supported something that Donald Trump. Not that it matters because he was talking, and today we see a whole different Donald Trump. But I'm not as gullible, as naive as those that continue to support, to argue, and to think that Donald Trump is the greatest thing that has happened since sliced bread. Because Donald Trump is a criminal. The only reason Donald Trump is indicted is because he's sitting in the Oval Office as the President of the United States. That's not a speculation. That's not an idea. That's not a damn liberal speaking. That's a fact. The only reason Donald Trump is not indicted is because he's the President of the United States. Imagine that. A crook. President of the United States, a criminal. And that's exactly what the country has. A criminal. His co-conspirator, Michael Cohen, is today sitting in jail because of that, for things that he has done for his partner. And on top of that, we know that Donald Trump committed obstruction of justice.
The order of the special counsel authorized us to investigate actions that could obstruct the investigation. And we conducted that investigation, and we kept the office of the acting attorney general apprised of the progress of our work. And forth in the report after that investigation, if we had had confidence that the president clearly did not commit a crime, we would have said so.
after we conducted our investigation, we concluded that if the president did not commit a crime, we would have said so. How does that translate in English for you? If the president did not commit a crime, we would have said so. Now let me put it in a different way, in a non-Robert Mueller way. The president did commit a crime. That's what a criminal is, someone who commits a crime. If the president did not commit a crime, we would have said so. I hope this presentation was useful and of some importance to you. Well, if not, you already know what suggestion. Let us know how to do it better. As we said before, this program is not going anywhere, so you might as well help make it better. In the meantime, if you have anything you would like us to talk about, let us know. We will research it, we will discuss it right here on the Fourth Branch program, the place for common sense. I hope you have a wonderful afternoon. Hope to see you again tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Good day. That was an update through the prism of common sense. Join us again tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. for a full presentation. I am MD, host of the Fourth Branch program, place for common sense. Send us comments, criticism, suggestion, or simply let us know how we're doing. Thank you for watching. Have a wonderful afternoon. See you next time.